Let's take you back to the Supreme Court of Appeal in Bloemfontein and the Correctional Services defending the Commissioner Arthur Fraser's decision to grant Jacob Zuma medical parole. The service's legal representative, Maribola Mphahlele, says Fraser had the power to take the decision following two conflicting medical reports. Zuma, you'll recall, is appealing the High Court's decision that found that his medical parole was unlawful. Let's talk to our reporter now, Ziyanda Ngcobo, who is monitoring proceedings there. Ziyanda, a quick summation of the arguments and in particular the questions from the judges. One of the key questions is, why would Parliament go through all of this trouble of establishing a medical parole board which is comprised of medical experts if their decision can simply be sidestepped by a National Commissioner of Correctional Services?
Absolutely, Xoli, and Section 79 of the Correctional Services Act is what is currently the subject of discussion right now. To summarize then the key arguments: one, what rationality test did Arthur Fraser use when coming to the decision that the former president must be granted medical parole, given the two preconditions that either one needs to be met in order to grant someone medical parole? One, you need to either be terminally ill or physically incapacitated, and even one of the justices, Nolwazi Mabendla Pokwana, raising the fact that nowhere in the medical reports, which parts of have been redacted, does it state categorically that the former president is terminally ill. Now, the fact that also parts of the medical reports are redacted has also come into question by Justices Plaskett and Gosson, who are questioning then how the courts, the lower courts, before it got to the Supreme Court of Appeal, were meant to assess and evaluate how Arthur Fraser reached the decision that he did, given the fact that they don't have all the information at their disposal. Now, with regards to your initial question regarding what was the point then of establishing an advisory board then if Arthur Fraser could then make his own determination, you'll recall that Fraser himself in his report had said that he actually quoted one of the doctors who basically gave a differing board to the rest of his members on the medical parole board. That's Dr. Mphahlele, and basically you would have heard Mphahlele, who's representing the Correctional Services, arguing then that the parole board, in terms of the powers that they have, do not supersede those of the National Commissioner according to the Correctional Services Act. So where we are right now is the second part then of today's court proceedings, which is the request by the Helen Suzman Foundation to say, well, the time that the former president has spent on medical parole, if this court upholds then previous court decisions to say that the decision to grant him medical parole was unlawful, then the time he spent outside should not form part of the 15-month jail sentence.
Well, Mphahlele argues that if indeed the Supreme Court upholds the argument that that time spent at home on parole, if that is not counted as having served time, which he argues is punishment, then that will mean it's double jeopardy for the former president.
Absolutely. I mean, we had just started that part of the arguments where, as you've just mentioned, he basically said that medical parole is in and of itself a punitive measure as a part of an array of punitive measures that are available within the judicial system, and that, now the question lies with, how far then do we take the matter of these punitive measures, Xoli?
Yeah, indeed. And we know that the former president was sentenced to 15 months in prison, out of which he served not more than 2 months in prison, which means that the remainder would then be 13 months. Let's conclude our conversation, Ziyanda, and talk about whether you have personally caught sight of the former president after your interview this morning with Mzwanele Manyi, who seemed to be confident that the former president was indeed going to attend court.
Zwanele Manyi is still very confident. I spoke to him just before he left the courtroom to take that tea break, saying that the former president will be here in 10 minutes. But as you've mentioned, I personally haven't caught sight of the former president this morning. Ziyanda
Ngcobo, let's leave it there for the time being. Live for us at the Supreme Court of Appeal.